Well, it's been approximately 12 hours since the Oscar nominations were announced. And to everyone who joined me this morning as I watched live, thank you to that. I am definitely tired, but I didn't want to end this day without talking about my five biggest surprises and my five biggest snubs. Now, I have a rule for the snubs in particular. I have to then be able to justify. If I am saying it's a snub, I have to say who I'm kicking out to make it a not a snub anymore. Like, cause I'm just like, you hear the term thrown around all the time. It's like, oh, they got snubbed. And it's like, there's five spots. Like, tell me who you're going to kick out of those categories to make room for that. So that is the goal for today. So let's talk about the five surprises and the five snubs of this year's Oscars ceremony. And let's just start with the one that it's number 5 on the surprise list because I was kind of predicting it to happen, but it still doesn't mean that I'm not really happy that it happened. And that is Coralie Fargeat for The Substance. She got in for director, beating out the likes of Denis Villeneuve, beating out the likes of such directors as Edward Berger, who got snubbed, or I use the word falsely there, but who didn't make the cut for Conclave. She had some tough competition, Ramel Ross, and ultimately Fargeat gets in. And I was pretty nervous watching it because they announced James Mangold, and I'm like, well, it's going to be Mangold, it's going to be Berger, it's over. And Fargeat makes it in, and that was something that I was really happy to see. I think The Substance is deserving of that reward. I think the work that she does in that movie is pretty incredible. I think it is the perfect middle point of body horror and this kind of pop-kish energy of, I would say, 21st century sensibilities that is fused so brilliantly within The Substance. I think it is fun for everyone, has a lot to say, but is firmly rooted within the iconography of body horror from the likes of David Cronenberg. I think it is a perfect evolution of that. I was very happy to see Fargeat make the cut. Here is my first snub, and some people are going to be shocked at this one. I truly think it's a snub, and I have the justification to get a nomination. It is Denzel Washington for Gladiator 2, and I just want to say I know that I've been higher on Denzel Washington and this film Gladiator 2 than most people have. I think the film is quite brilliant, and I think it is kind of being underappreciated, especially what we saw with the nominations today. But Denzel is having a blast in this, and I don't think we appreciate what Denzel is doing in this movie. He is having so much fun in this role. He is the puppet master in this movie in a way that I think is the driving force of this movie. For anything that works in the movie, it is solely cemented around the Denzel Washington performance. And I think Denzel is letting loose in a way we don't always get to see Denzel let loose. This is a very big performance from him. It takes what he's done so well with Ridley Scott's brother who passed away a few years ago, Tony Scott, and it fuses those sensibilities with what Denzel has always done. It has this aspect of Shakespearean, but it also has this over-the-top quality that works for Denzel. And I would take out Edward Norton for a complete unknown here. And I think Norton does certainly good work, but I don't know if it's so justifiable to necessarily kick out Denzel Washington. So I would personally have Denzel over Edward Norton on my list. Let's talk about a surprise for me, which was Nosferatu getting 3 below the line nominations. This film definitely overperformed. It got cinematography, which was one that I didn't have Nosferatu getting any. So the fact that it got cinematography, the fact that it got production design, and the fact that it got costume design, like, that's a big deal for Nosferatu. And it is, again, kind of a showing of, I think, one, who Robert Eggers is as a filmmaker, the attention to detail he has, and also a recognition of the horror genre that, again, horror has always struggled within the Academy Awards. I think Nosferatu, those are 3 nominations that I agree with. It would have been cool to see Lily Rose Depp get a push because I actually think she's quite good in that film. But this is, again, just another stepping stone and just another showcase of, hey, look who Robert Eggers is and look at the talent that he can have. And let's continue to support that vision. I think this is an important stepping stone for Robert Eggers as a filmmaker, and I'm glad to see it rewarded. Number 4 for films that got snubbed. And this is a tricky one. Ultimately, I have 2 movies that I'm not even sure which one I'm saying, but I have A Real Pain and Sing Sing, which missed out on Best Picture. Now, I actually like the list. And so here's the thing. Personally, I would kick out Emilia Perez without a second thought. Like, it's a really easy kick out for me. And I didn't respond to Nickel Boys the way other people responded to Nickel Boys. So personally, I would put in A Real Pain and Sing Sing in there. Again, they're not necessarily my favorite films of that year. Like, personally, I'd had a Civil War, but based on the films that was really in contention and you felt like this has a really good shot at getting it, I think A Real Pain and Sing Sing were all sitting around this 8 to 12 range. And like I said, those would be my advocations. I think both of those are very worthwhile films. I am pretty annoyed / ticked off with what A24 did to Sing Sing. I think Sing Sing could have gotten a lot more love. And ultimately, I think A Real Pain was a movie that I liked. I didn't love myself, but it is also another movie that I like this type of movie getting a larger recognition and not just being primarily focused on the actor of Kieran Culkin. Like, I would have been excited to see Jesse Eisenberg get this level of acclaim in his sophomore debut. So that's my personal feelings on that. We'll actually come back to Nickel Boys in a second. One of the surprises that made me incredibly happy, though, was Sing Sing, speaking of it, getting the adapted screenplay nomination. This was one that I had been rooting for. I think this is one where the screenplay is definitely one of the highlights of Sing Sing. And to see Sing Sing get some love in categories that wasn't necessarily expected. I don't know if anyone thought a bit about it getting song. I think some people were leaning towards the idea that it would get adapted screenplay. I believe I was one of those people as well. That's where I think Sing Sing can really just, again, garner something. And so I'm glad to see that it got a meaningful nomination, even if it missed out on Best Picture. And I think that script is worth celebrating. Snub, though, and this one was one that I was pretty, annoyed by. It is Nickel Boys not getting the cinematography nomination. To remind you, the 5 were The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Maria, Nosferatu. Those are actually 5 really good films with a lot of great cinematography. Personally, again, this is the easy case where I'd kick out Emilia Perez, and I might even consider kicking out Maria from this category. The reason I am advocating for Nickel Boys, despite it being a film that I didn't love myself, is I think that cinematography is kind of groundbreaking in the way that it is shot within the first-person point of view. Obviously, other films have dabbled in that, and some films have even done it in a feature length. I think this is the one that gets closest to cracking the code. I believe this film has an understanding of camera movement. Everything that you think of with cinematography to basically be another language to convey emotion. I love the way the camera moves in this movie. When you watch this movie, really try to get engrossed in this idea, like your eyes, the camera is your eyes in this movie. So when there's a scene of discomfort, notice as the camera drops down as your eyes reach the ground. Like, there's so many minute details that I think could have been awful, to be honest. And I think the direction of this movie is handled to expertise. And I would have loved to see Nickel Boys get recognized in the category that I thought it was best deserving in. And especially because I was surprised that it missed out on cinematography, but then ended up getting the picture nomination. I thought that was almost like a guarantee. Well, if it's going to get picture, it's going to get cinematography. That's how I felt about that. Number 2, and I'm sure this is what a lot of you are here for, one of the biggest surprises, maybe even the biggest one, is I'm Still Here, not only getting Best Actress for Fernanda Torres, not only getting the international feature, which was expected, but you know what else it got? It got the Best Picture nomination. Wow. What a huge day for the country of Brazil. This was a film that I don't think anyone really had in conversation for their top 10 nomination predictions. I certainly had it in the top 15. I remember kind of flirting with this movie around my 13, 14, 15 slot. Coming up to that day, I didn't write it down as, I think this could potentially happen. I never even considered that. So to hear it read out, I was like, oh, wow, That's a shocking nomination. And that is cool for an international feature film like that to get that level of recognition and hopefully get a wider release in the United States as a result. A snub for me, and this one's an egregious snub for me. It ended up winning the Golden Globe for this category. It is Best Original Score. Challengers missed out. Challengers is a movie that I quite liked but didn't love. But the score is the best element of that movie. I love the Challenger score done by Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross. I'm looking at the list. Who ended up getting in was Conclave, The Brutalist, Amelia Perez, The Wild Robot, Wicked. To be honest, I'd be willing to basically kick out any of these films in favor of challengers. Looking at the list, I would probably lean towards Wicked or The Wild no, Amelia Perez is, again, just you guys know how I felt about Amelia Perez, but I mean, I would kick out in favor of it Amelia Perez, The Wild Robot, like Wicked. Those are like three obvious ones. Conclave and Brutalist are good scores, so I'd have to think about that one a little harder. But yeah, ultimately, I'm just bummed. I think Challengers, the best part of that movie is the score, and I think that's what makes it unique, and I think that's what allowed it to catch the audience that it did, was this kind of just throwback to the early 2000s club music that works to wonderful effects in this movie. My biggest surprise, and the one that I am happy about, and I think you all know where this is coming from, someone who has been championing this movie for quite a while, I am excited to say that the first category announced was Best Supporting Actor. And I'm like, can we please get Jeremy Strong in here? Can we please get Jeremy Strong in here for The Apprentice? And whose name is right off? Jeremy Strong, The Apprentice. And I'm like, yes, this is great. Now, if we can only get Sebastian Stan in there for The Apprentice, but that's probably not going to happen. No one wants to deal with Trump right now, especially as he's promising his reign of vengeance and revenge of over the next 4 years. I'm like, Hollywood's not going to want to deal with this. You got the new ambassadors of Hollywood, John Voight, Sylvester Stallone, whoever the third guy is, Mel Gibson, I think, is the third guy. Like, they're not going to just want to deal with the landmine that is Trump. But ultimately, and I think this is the case of the international branch, really uplifted The Apprentice, and they got Sebastian Stan, who, for my money's worth, gave two of the best performances of 2024, maybe even gave the two best performances of 2024. He elevates the material, and Sebastian Stan gets the Oscar nomination for The Apprentice for playing Donald Trump. And I was so ecstatic. I was so happy to see Sebastian Stan rewarded in this category. I think it is a brilliant performance, and I understand why a lot of you would probably want to skip out on this movie. Spend the time with this movie, understand what this movie is trying to convey, and understand what this movie is saying about humanity, the loss of humanity, and the absurdity of this reality that we live in this specific moment of time. The biggest snub for me, and I knew it was going to come, and I was hoping that beyond hope that it wouldn't happen. And I knew it was going to happen, but it still happened, and I was like, oh my God. The movie, The Substance, gets rewarded so much. It gets actress, it gets picture, it gets director, and honestly, maybe the most important performance in that movie, Margaret Qualley, who is so intangent and so important, especially with the Demi Moore performance. Margaret Qualley gets shortchanged. She gets snubbed. She's incredible in The Substance. This is like legitimately incredible, incredible stuff that she is doing within The Substance. To play this character, to be the yin and yang to the Demi Moore character, I find it quite an incredible performance that I think Margaret Qualley is just as game for as Demi Moore. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't understand how you nominate every other category for The Substance and really let it overperform and shine tonight. And yet Margaret Qualley is the one who just kind of gets ignored. I guess this is, again, the push of it's going more to Demi Moore, and we can reward Margaret Qualley down the line. This is by far an incredible Margaret Qualley performance. I think she's incredible, and I think she was so deserving of the nominations, especially when you say that, like, you're looking at it, it's like Isabella Rossellini from Conclave. She's in the movie for like 4 minutes. She has one monologue that I thought was pretty like, get Isabella Rossellini out of there in favor of Margaret Qualley. But anyway, again, I actually thought this was a pretty good Oscars nomination list. Like, I don't have a ton of complaints. Yeah, there were films that I may have preferred that didn't get in. There were films like Civil War or Hitman that I love that really didn't get any love this year. But ultimately, I'm pretty okay with this list. Obviously, Emilia Perez, but ultimately, this is a good year, and I think we're going to have another few good months of conversations. And to everyone who's been joining me for these conversations, make sure you like and subscribe. I'll be back Sunday, in theory, talking about the 10 films that I said had Oscar buzz, and now I look like an idiot. These are my 10 worst predictions going into the Oscars season. So stay tuned for that and make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. And to everyone who joined me 5:30 a.m. on the Pacific this morning to watch the Oscar nominations live with me, all 1,000 plus of you. Like, shout out to you guys. You guys are the real ones. Take care, and I'll be back in a few days.